What's up, everyone? Today I have John from Side Hustle Experiment, and I'm so excited to have John here because I met him back during the Miami Sellers Conference. I vividly remember sitting down at a table and eating some pizza with him and
Yeah.
just talking about the book business game. And he's just a really cool, genuine, down-to-earth guy. I'm so excited to bring him on the channel because, he basically quit his 9-to-5 job. He went into flipping furniture. Then he went into the bulk book business game and then finally transitioned to OA. So there's like a ton to unpack here and talk about. And like I said, I think he's a really cool guy and you'll get a lot of value from listening to him. So John, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me.
You ready to get started? First question?
Yeah, let's do this.
All right, let's do it. So just to start off, in your opinion, do you think, I know you don't do it anymore, but in your opinion, do you think that the bulk book business game is still viable? And if so, why or why not?
Yeah, I think any business on Amazon is viable. You just have to be willing. I like to tell people that, everyone always says, oh, RA, OA, private label, like they all have like really bad things and some have really good, like, it's just like, what problems do you want to have? For the bulk book game, you have to really be prepared to merge fulfill. I would probably say it's been almost a year since I've been like in it, but I would almost think there'd be more supply just because I think a lot of the smaller players have gotten out. Like I would consider myself a smaller player. Like we were doing maybe like a truckload, maybe 2 a month. There are people who are doing like a truckload a day.
That's crazy.
So that's like big player. That's what I kind of think of. So I think a lot of them are like doing really well. And I think once you have systems in place, for me, it was more like, I want to do FBA. Like, I do not want to have to send out 40, 50, 100 books a day, deal with customer messages that they're lost. And there's like systems and stuff you could set up for that. That just wasn't for me. Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally viable. I think it's definitely going to be harder. I feel like you used to like be able to just like do it out of a storage unit or a lot of people think, oh, like the Goodwill said they would sell me like a Gaylord for like $300. And it's like, yeah, but like now you need like a truck to get that. Like, how are you going to get the pallet off the truck? Like, there's all this like little stuff that comes up. I think it's definitely doable, but it's definitely going to be a longer process. And you're really going to have to merge fulfill heavy.
Cool. Yeah. Most of my channel, most of my audience member are online book arbitrage buyers, right? But I know some people in the book game are curious about bulk books. So I'm curious, what exactly do you need to run the bulk business? Because, we do online book arbitrage. You really just need Keepa and you need a prep center, and that's literally about it. So what are some of the things that if someone did want to become like a small fish, get into the game, what are some of the things that they would actually need to go that route?
There's a couple things. So I did it out of a storage unit. So basically what I did for the first time, I rented a truck, like a Penske truck. It was, 26 feet long, I think it was. Went to pick it up. You want to make sure that wherever you buy them has a forklift to load the books, or you bring a pallet jack with you. For the first time, I rented a pallet jack, because like, how are you going to move them? Like, you need to move them. Like that is like a big, like you need to move the books at like one point. Even if you stack them in a truck, you're really not going to get through the middle. So you have to take them off or like figure out something else. I'd probably suggest a storage unit just to kind of work out of. You're going to need a piece of plywood or something, because all the storage units have like a little lip.
Okay. Oh, I did.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a huge problem. The first time I did a test for like, I got the forklift and I was like, okay, like there's a lip here, so I'm going to need to like account for that. So I kind of did that. And then the biggest thing is you need a plan to get rid of all the bad stuff.
Gotcha.
Because that's where everyone thinks it's like, and I did too, like how could you lose? Like you're getting like 10,000 books for, let's call it 800. Like how could you possibly lose? Even though you got $1 for every book, like how could I lose? But you have to realize that probably in a good scenario, maybe like 10% of them are good. You're probably looking at maybe 5 to 8-ish. Just really depends on where you're buying them from. So for me, I had the whole thing planned. I rented the truck in the morning. I had someone help me. So we went through, I think we only got 6. It took like all day. or 8, I don't even remember. Went through all of them, and the idea was like we need the so when you rent the truck, it's super expensive. I think it's like 200 or 300 bucks.
Okay.
So like you want to try to get through them the first day so you could drop them off. So if you
Gotcha.
get them, take them out, and then you don't process all them and you have to rent another truck, then it's like
Sheesh.
even more expensive. Another way I guess you could do it, I've never done it. You could process the books and then plan on buying new ones and like
Okay.
dropping the old ones off first and then getting the new ones. But that was the big like issue we had. I remember
Okay.
so you have to call ahead. So for us, we had a Goodwill outlet. It was like a
Okay.
huge facility. So like I called them, I was like, hey, would you be able to take like 6 to 8 gaylords of books?
Uh
Like we have a big because like I didn't want to show up there and then be like, no. 'Cause
huh.
now I'm like really stuck. So you definitely want to do that. And then I think we boxed all them up. We put them all in like medium Home Depot boxes and we basically just like were unloading them. And I think the first time it was like probably 100 boxes.
Oh
Like
my
they were probably
gosh.
like 80 pounds. And we were just like, and they were rolling out Gaylords and we were just dumping them in. If you don't know what a
Wow.
Gaylord is, it's like a
A
huge,
massive, yeah.
yeah, it's like 48 by 48 by like 36 maybe. And then it like occurred to me, I was like, do you guys take like Gaylord donations? And they're like, oh yeah. I was like, oh, I should just like I should have just did that, but like
I
you
see.
don't know. The only issue with that is like you get charged for the Gaylords. They're usually like
Oh, they
10 or
charge you to donate?
$15. Yeah, but usually if you're buying from the same source, like you return them and then they give
Oh, I
you.
see.
It's like kind of like a cycle. Like once you kind of get through the first one. But yeah,
Gotcha.
that's if you kind of do it in a storage unit. I mean, I guess you would kind of do it in your garage. If you do it in your garage, you
Right.
definitely need a pallet jack. Like, there's really no way around that because, like, you just need to move them. I
Right.
mean, you could spend an hour or two, like, just if you were trying to like transfer them into another, like, you just are going to need to move them at some point.
Right.
So, like, a pallet jack is a definite. And then, if you kind of want to go on a bigger scale and get like a warehouse, like, you could do that. You need like a dumper table, a dumper that like dumps the books on the table.
Uh-huh.
You could get like more sophisticated scanners and equipment,
Right.
tables and stuff like that. But if you're just gonna try to do it, like you could easily bang it out with just like Scout IQ and like your Bluetooth scanner.
Very
But
cool.
pallet jack, I would probably say is the most essential.
Probably it's the first thing that you definitely need, right? It seems like there's so many little things that you probably don't think about originally, and it is a lot, right? And I'm sure just like regular Amazon game is like there's so many little things we learn along the way that we kind of take for granted. And when newer people come along, they ask us questions, we're like, dude, this is kind of obvious information, but really it isn't. Like you got to learn
Yeah.
right as you go through it. So that's really fascinating. Now, how exactly does one find these sources for bulk book buys? Like, is it a cold DM kind of sort of game where it's like you try to find suppliers, you literally just cold DM them, or is it like you actually set up a legitimate business and you have a website and you go outreach? Like, what was kind of the best way to go find the inventory that you need and find good inventory?
Yeah, before I get into that, I just want to go back real quick.
Yeah.
I think the plan to get rid of them is the most important, and kind of realize
Okay.
too, if you do plan on boxing them up and bringing them to a thrift store, 1,000 books is probably if you get like 50 books in a small Home Depot box, like that's a lot. Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have to get like not 800, 900. So like before you get into that, envision like hauling 50 to like 60
My
or whatever
gosh.
the math is on that
Right. That's
to
a
a
ton.
thrift store, and they're going to be like pretty pissed. You don't give them the heads up.
Yeah.
But how to get a source? So for me, I had no idea. Like I was just like, you see it on Instagram, like, oh wow, this would be amazing.
Yeah.
And you like hear advice. It's like, oh, like go to thrift stores. It's like, oh, like thanks, like got it. Like obviously, but I found the best way. So I basically just sent an email. So I found like a thrift store that I bought at usually, and my pitch was basically like, hey, I spend like hundreds of dollars in your store every month. I would like to spend more. By any chance, you sell books in bulk? And the two people didn't get back to me. One store got back to me, and there's like, yeah, like let's set up a call. And I was like,
Oh, that's
okay.
cool.
Like I was looking for like a yes, but like, so we get on the call, and they're like, like, how would this work? Like, they're asking me, and like I've
Yeah.
heard it before. They're like, why don't you come up with a plan for us? And I was like, okay. So like I just like I think I had like a Word doc, and it was just like I'm like Google like how much they're like come up with a plan, how much you want to pay, and yeah, we'll go from there. I'm like, okay. So I'm like Googling how much is a Gaylord of books, or like how much is a pound, like so like it was between like 5 and 10 cents at the time.
Okay.
Probably closer to 10 now, depending on what you're doing. And then it was just like, okay, got that. And I'm like, pay between, I was like, I like to pay between, 5 to 10 cents. Or I think I proposed five, thinking
Five
they would
cents.
like kind of go up. And
Mhm.
then it was like, and it was like so dumb. I was just like, all right, like I'm gonna pick them up one day. I'm gonna get a truck. You guys have a forklift. And then like, yeah, like I hope this relationship works out. So after I like get them, like I'll, bring them back, like, the pallets and the gaylords, and then like hopefully we can continue doing this. Like somehow I turned that into a page. But that was like the basis. And then
Okay.
like four people they like I remember I was at work and I did over a lunch, and like I get on the call and like I email it to them and like I have it printed out, and like I'm running, they're like, yeah, we got like five people here, we got like the head of it, and I was like,
Oh
what?
my gosh.
Like, and so I like went through it and they're like, yeah, 5 cents sounds good. And I was like, can I like get them on Saturday? Because like I work full. It was like such a disaster. They're like,
That's
yeah, like
hilarious.
Saturday's no problem. And then I was like, all right, like cool. Can we do it this day? And then
Wow.
they're like, yes. In the back of my head, I kind of already had like kind of the first things worked out. Like I knew I was gonna need to get a truck, so I kind of knew where to get that, because like you don't want them to say yes and then like
You
you're
gotta
like,
be prepared.
oh, I don't know like where to get all this stuff, and then you kind of look foolish, and then like just ask them how you want to pay for it.
Mhm.
Like most of the time you're gonna have to do cash or check. But yeah, so you could go to thrift stores. I feel it's easiest just to like go to the ones you shop. I've had it before. It didn't work out. I did get a contact, but the guy was like, all right, he's kind of a jerk. But basically, I donated books to a thrift store and
Uh-huh.
pretended it's like, oh, like, do you guys like get a lot of book donations? And they're like, oh yeah, like look at all these. I was like, oh wow, like, do you know if you guys like sell them by like the Gaylord? Like,
Uh-huh.
oh yeah, man, like we have like 20 of them. Like,
Oh,
look at all
wow.
these. And I was like, oh man, like this, but they had a broker and they wanted like it was like 10 or 12 cents a pound,
Okay.
and that wasn't even delivered. It was like so much, and the guy, I don't know what his deal is. He just like laughed at me. He was just like, I told him the name of my company. I think it was like Give Books New Life, and he's like, that's the dumbest name ever.
Oh my gosh, dude,
Like,
what a jerk,
okay,
man.
like thanks.
Jeez. Trying to help him
So you
out.
can do that. I think that's a good way.
Okay.
Another way in, which is definitely more expensive, is to try to find larger booksellers in your area.
Okay.
Some of them do like to pay it forward. So, if they're paying like 5 cents, like maybe they'll give it to you for like 10 cents. Sometimes they even let you like process in their facility,
Wow.
because sometimes they just have like too much, and it's
Right.
actually, I think I'd let one person do it. It's just easier, right? Because like if you come to me, it's like, hey, like I want to buy a Gaylord, like I got like a pickup truck. In my head, I'm like, this is like too much work. Like, why don't you just come? I'll give you an empty Gaylord. Like you could just scan them, and then like my guy will just take them away. Like that's so much easier for me than
Right.
like try to load it on your pickup truck. Like worry about how you're getting it. Like so, there's just lots of options there. I think
Cool.
some libraries do it. So yeah, but it's mostly a cold DM or just kind of like talk to a manager, make friends with someone. But I do like the donation angle, because I
Right.
feel like a lot of the people in the donation like section are just very talkative. They just like they're like, yeah, we have so much, and like they just want to be like helpful. So they're like, yeah, I
Right.
think we can sell them, like all this stuff. So it's funny.
Cool. So it seems to me like the learning curve, honestly, is massive. Like just listening to you kind of recount your stories, like it's like I'm laughing because it's actually hilarious. Like you just walking through and reflecting on your, the experiences that you've gone through. But I'm just curious, like, for me, shipping is very easy. Obviously, I use Amazon FBA. Even if I do merchant fulfill, that's super simple, right? I
Yeah.
guess if you could talk a little bit about how exactly does the shipping work with the gaylords? Because I know, I mean, you kind of talked about a little bit. You need a pallet jack or something, but like I have no idea. Like I've never. You actually have had a warehouse. You've had trucks, still,
Yeah.
truckloads delivered to you, so you know how that process works. So, what does that like look like? Is it actually really difficult to get a truck set up and get gaylord on? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so the first time it was like really hard. So one of the things I had like trouble like getting rid of the books. I had a pallet jack, and this one guy, I actually ended up doing business with him.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't figure out a way to get rid of the books for whatever reason. The person who was supposed to take them backed out on me, and I was like, "Damn!" And some random, I just posted them on Craigslist, like Gaylords of books. You know, I gave him the whole. I'm an Amazon seller. Like this stuff I can't use, whatever. And he owned like a bookstore, so he was like, "You know what? Like, great, I'll take them." And we had the pallet jack, and I didn't know what I was doing. So like I never put them on a truck like
Uh-huh.
prior to this, because like they would come with a forklift. I could take them off the truck, like that was
Right.
easier for me. Um, and then I had a moving company eventually just do it for me.
Okay.
But yeah, that is kind of yeah. So we actually unloaded like 8 pallets by hand and loaded
By
it.
hand, 8 pallets.
Yeah, it
Oh my
took
gosh,
like 5 or 6 hours. It was
that's
terrible.
crazy. How many
Um,
how many books fit in a pallet? Just like you roughly?
it could be anywhere 800 to 1,000.
1,000. Jeez. Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
so
didn't
it
mean to
was
interrupt
a
you.
ton. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's kind of the hard part. I mean, a lot of for me, it was mostly I had a supplier, so they would come and drop it off. So they would come, unload it, put it where I wanted. And then I had a person who picked up all the duds. And it was the
Okay.
same deal. They would come, when I had a forklift, I would just load it on their truck. Or when the
Okay.
supplier came, I would unload it. It
Okay.
is possible with the pallet jack.
Right.
I've never really loaded a truck by pallet jack. I've always had a forklift, or
Okay.
kind of like the dud supplier would kind of take them,
Okay.
or I would like kind of drop it on the lift gate, and then as they lifted it up, they would take it with their
Gotcha.
pallet jack or whatever. Yeah, it's definitely you basically. It's hard to explain, but like trying to think, like if this was like the truck ramp, like
Uh-huh.
this, like you literally have to roll it up and then you pivot,
Okay.
and like the wheels hang off on the side, and
Okay.
then you're bringing up like the ramp, and then once you're level, you could like swing it off. It's like super like kind of scary at first, but like once you get the hang of it, it's not that
Yeah,
bad.
it'd be very. It seemed like to me, I'd have so much anxiety the first time doing it because obviously you're probably working with someone who's done it so many times, and they're probably thinking like, "Dude, this guy is such a newbie. Like, what is this guy doing?" But anyways, yeah, I
Yeah, a
think
lot of the time you just have to. I've learned that you just have to like lean, like just be honest
yeah,
and like lean on the people. Like for the first one, I was like, "Oh, like you'll load it with a forklift, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Do you need me to bring a pallet jack?" And they're like, "No." I was like, "Okay." Like, because I was like, "Oh, maybe I have to like push it back or
yeah,
whatever." And they're like, "No, like we're good." Like, and like with the pallet jack or the forklift, they would like load one, then they load the next one, and then with the other one, they would just push it back, drop the other one, push it
gotcha.
back, and then they
Interesting.
did that. I was like, "Okay, cool." Like, I would have no idea. I'd like be like, "All right, I'm ready to move it." They'd be like, "What are you doing, bro? Like, get out of the way." Or like when they came to unload it, it was just like you just like kind of, and then like they're like, "Where do you want it?" I'm like, "Oh, right over there." I'm
Right
like,
over here.
"Okay, cool. I guess they like unload it." Like you just kind of learn these like little things and kind
Right,
of just be nice, pay on time, and do all that kind of stuff. And
right.
usually just be honest. Like I told the first guy, or it was the second guy I was working with, it was just like, yo, like I tried 2 suppliers, like not really that happy, you know, this is what I'm looking for. And he's like, okay. And like he was just a really nice guy, and like we have
Cool.
a really good relationship. And like, yeah, he was like one of those type of people who just like make it work. So yeah, whenever there's a jam or something, like even with like the wood, like it was such a nightmare with the lip in the storage unit. They were just so nice, like because like it would get so sometimes the wood would get stuck under the
Uh-huh.
gaylord just because like how you brought it up, or it would start to break. And like he actually like sold me He might have just bought it because it looked brand new. He sold me like a metal ramp for like $100. He's like, "Oh, like I have an extra ramp. Like if you, it probably saved him like so much time."
Yeah,
Um, so like yeah, that definitely helped. So it was
that's
like,
cool.
oh, like they sell a metal ramp for this. Like just like little things you don't think
Yeah.
of. Like, what are you gonna do? Like like metal ramp for storage? Like what is gonna come up for that? Like
Yeah, this seems like there's so many little things that you'd have to learn for sure. Now, I'm curious for this to be very profitable. Obviously, people do it, but obviously, a lot of people probably get into it and get out of it because it is a lot of work. But for the people that are profitable, does the profit come with the fine tuning of the systems, or is the profit really just finding amazing sources, or is it really a combination of both? Like, what would you say?
It's a combination of both. So one of the most profitable things I think, or which I was able to do well, is basically monetizing the duds. So
Oh, okay.
what happens is like if you just did FBA books and
Hmm.
merch fulfilled, I think for most people it'd be pretty hard unless you had like really, really good sources.
Okay.
Definitely possible, but there are companies like Sell Back Your Book. So
Right.
they're giving you like 5 to 10 cents per whatever book they'll take. So if you fill up a pallet for them, it's like $200, right? So
Right.
if I buy 10 Gaylords, let's say, and it's $800, well, there's $200 right there.
Right.
There's another company called Ziffit or
Okay.
Zip. They're kind of like Sell Back Your Book. They kind of take different stuff. You don't necessarily, you probably would only get like a quarter of a pallet with them, but that you could probably like figure another $100 for that. I was
Cool.
working with someone who was a retired teacher actually, and he sold kids books to
Oh,
like
wow.
I don't know. I guess he was saying that like teachers need to like buy books for their classroom.
Uh huh.
So I would just put a whole Gaylord of books aside for him, like kid chapter books,
Oh,
picture
cool.
books, and then he would come go through them, like take what he wants. He'd give me like $20 a box.
Wow,
Uh,
that's pretty good.
so
Okay.
that was like probably 200-300 bucks. So like by the time like it was all said and done, and I had someone who owned a bookstore, that guy I loaded all the books with. So I put history books aside for him. He would come, he'd take all the history books for
Uh
I think
huh.
like $10 a box. So like pretty much like the load was paid for kind of before I even did like Amazon FBA.
Right.
A lot of people don't do all that. They'll do like Sell Back Your Book and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
It just really depends on how you set it up. Some people set it up as they don't pay for the books, like they have donation bins.
Uh
So
huh.
like you might have to pay rent, or maybe you just could drop them for free. So if you get books that way, other people just like you could have like a really good maybe website. You
Uh
run
huh.
Facebook ads where people come to you and donate books, or you go
Right.
pick them up. But yeah, in terms of profitability, it's like you really have to have a fine-tuned system. The hardest part, I would say, is labor. So
Right.
while books are super profitable, like there's a lot of labor.
Right.
Like when I thought we had it down, it was just me and two people, and we could get through a Gaylord in about an
Uh huh.
hour 20 minutes, depending on how much garbage was in there. Um, but yeah, it's really hard to make that go faster,
Right. So,
unless you have another dumper or another table or different processes, or like now some of the really bigger guys, they have like these conveyor belts that just like shoot books off in all these directions or whatnot. But yeah, I mean, you could definitely make it profitable, but monetizing the duds is definitely like a big piece of that,
yeah,
because I mean, usually like Sell Back Your Book, it'd be like I don't know, like almost 1,200, $2,000 like a month just from them,
that is quite a bit. Yeah.
which is
So
a
that's
lot.
really cool. Monetizing all the duds. I'm curious then for the books that you actually were able to sell, like what kind of books were you actually getting? Like what was the average, like what would you say the average sell price was for any of the FBA books you were sending, like versus any of the FBM books you were selling
I'd probably say I think it was around like $18
for
for
FBM or for FBA?
FBA
FBA. Okay.
all together. So we
Okay.
did more FBA. We also did eBay a lot. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
we got I got really good at eBay, like looking up rare books, and we found like this first edition Black Law, like first edition like dictionary,
Uh
and
huh.
we sold it for like I think it was $2,500.
$2,000. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, or I think it was listed at 2,500, and we got like 2,250 maybe.
That's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, so
Jeez.
we definitely sold some books like in the 500s or 800s. Not like regularly, but like eBay, I think we did like 50 grand. Like
Wow. That's pretty
the
impressive for eBay.
last
Jeez.
year we kind of did it. Just kind of you just get a knack for like kind of seeing these things. But again, that's like very like time consuming to
Right.
do. But yeah, I mean FBA is great. I think once restock limits happened, it was definitely much tougher. It was this constant bounce of for a smaller operation like I was, it's really hard to merchant fulfill a book that you're only going to make 50 cents on.
Right.
Right?
Jeez, I
For
can't
someone like
imagine.
Sell Back
Yeah.
Your Books or these bigger guys, right?
Right.
Like if you're sent like you're throwing money away because like if you have really good systems in place, like you're literally just printing like picking the book, printing a label, and putting it in an envelope. Like
Right.
for the most part. So like that makes sense for them, but like for someone like me, like that just doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
So sending books to FBA was like great. Merchant Fulfilled was just like we did it,
Right.
but I definitely prefer FBA.
Okay. Now, I'm sure you had to use a repricer because there's no way you're going there manually repricing all of them, especially after unloading all these boxes. I'm sure that was just a lot, right? So, what repricer did you use, and kind of what was your strategy for repricing, especially against like some of the larger sellers, like Glenn the bookseller, any of the, I guess FBA, but also merchant fulfilled. Some of them, it seems like they like thrift books, Goodwill, they seem to like tank prices pretty aggressively at the reprices. So, what were you using? Kind of what was your strategy for pricing?
So I use Repriceit,
Okay.
which I definitely don't recommend. Like
Okay.
it's just kind of what I got set up with.
Okay.
Like that's like basically when I started, like whatever was like kind of being used in the community. Like there weren't like a whole ton.
Right.
Like Reprice, like now it's like oh, it'd be cool, Goauras. Like there's so many other ones out there now. But back then it was only well, not only, but that was like the bookseller one for the most
Right.
part. So I think the strategy was like don't price below like 850, match buy box, like don't lower it. It was like very just generic. It
Gotcha.
became really hard when you have like 6 or 8,000 books to be like very hey like you just can't have like a really specific one because like there's so many different scenarios.
Right.
So like a lot of the times like I think there's a setting like you could set like books over this price don't reprice. So let's say
Gotcha.
it was like over like $60.
Okay. I see. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, like I would do that manually, or Repriceit was great because you could just list like if you put like don't reprice books over $500, right? So
Uh-huh.
back in the day, you could like list books for five. You could just send all your textbooks in at like
Uh-huh.
$500, and then when textbook season rolled around, like then you could reprice them, and you didn't have to
Gotcha.
worry about selling like a $90 textbook for like $50 or whatever. But then when Amazon started like the high price alerts, right, and all that
Right.
stuff like flags the books, you can't do that anymore. So I just started kind of holding textbooks. But really, for me, it was really just using Repriceit towards the end when I was like liquidating everything. I
Uh-huh.
actually used Goaura, and that was like really good. You
Okay.
could like they actually set it up for me. They basically set up like almost like a liquidation strategy where I think I
Okay.
would make $1 on every book, like regardless. Like they calculated all the weight and stuff like that, and like for
Okay.
me, like you know, I just had to get rid of them, and some of them I couldn't. I actually have like I think $500 in like disposal fees because like I just have to get rid of them now. And I
Right.
think I still have another like 40 that like I just have to get rid of.
Cool. Now, I know that you said you were a smaller player. That's what you said. I didn't say that. You said you were a smaller player in the game. I'm curious, did you ever contact any of the bigger fish in the marketplace? And if so, did they give you any like tips of advice that really like accelerated your game, like made your business better?
Yeah, so there are actually a lot of people like I was really friendly with like Caleb Roth. He
Right.
wasn't necessarily like bulk books, but he definitely ran like a large consignment business.
Right.
David Chung,
Right.
he was huge. I used to talk to him maybe like once a month ish, and yeah, he was just very. I actually didn't really. I knew of him and like met him. I think once at a conference. It
Uh-huh.
wasn't to the end. He helped me kind of make the decision to like move on.
Okay.
Not saying that he said books were bad or anything, but
Yeah.
he was just like, it sounds like what you need to do. This is what you need to do. And it doesn't sound like you want to do that. I like how he thinks a lot. He's just very clear and like
Yeah.
meticulous. And a lot of what he said to me made sense. I think just the Facebook groups are really good. But yeah, a lot of the advice I got, there was someone in a Facebook group who actually gave me my first supplier. They
Oh,
were
wow.
doing, I don't even know what they were doing. They were basically figured out a way to monetize duds like
Okay.
overseas. So they weren't even like doing FBA. Like they were huge FBA players like 10 years ago or whatever, and then moved on. So like they just knew people from the industry.
Okay.
That person was extremely helpful and just helped me like figure out a warehouse, like pick out the right one, how to get a forklift, like, oh, like they're super expensive. He's like, dude, like just lease one for like $200. It's like lease to buy. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, like yeah, lease one. Yeah, that makes sense. And then it's like, oh, yeah, you need propane to run this thing. Like, how do you get that? Like, there's no like forklift propane at Home Depot. So
Yeah.
I couldn't find any. So like I contacted my book supplier. I was like, where do you get like your propane? And so he gave me someone. So like there's a lot of people that like helped along the way, and like you just have
Right.
to be willing to like ask. And usually people are like pretty nice because they either been where you've been,
Hmm.
or when you're talking to like other booksellers, it's a lot different. It's kind of a less cutthroat community
Right.
because in Pennsylvania, like I'm not competing with you in
Right.
California, right? Because like logically it'd be so expensive for me to try to steal your source
Right.
in California, even if I did get a truckload, like it just would make no sense.
Right.
So yeah, everyone's always willing to help or kind of be like, this is how I handle this. And online arbitrage, it's a little more cutthroat.
Yeah, I think I can tell. It seems like just being genuine, honest person, and also like you said, there's no way that you can compete with people like
Yeah.
because you're in different markets, right? Now I'm wondering, did you ever have to deal with IP? Like, how did you deal with IP complaints at that sort of volume? Because I just actually had somebody from Steve Rakin's mentorship group reach out to me, a good friend. She basically said she got an IP complaint just yesterday on like a random $15 book. It's like a book that you can actually now go look at the Keepa chart and you can see some drop off. So it kind of clearly looks like there were some previous IP complaints, but as a bulk, book person, like you're not looking at Keepa charts, you're just going through volume. So I'm curious, how did you get IP complaints with books at volume, and how did you approach dealing with those?
So towards the end, yeah. So we had a big issue with textbooks, like counterfeit textbooks,
Right.
where we got like flagged for it. Like we actually had a law firm was like sending us letters.
ONZ.
Yeah, we ended up. I think I ended up paying them like $2,000 to like
Oh,
kind of squash it. And like they were like, "Oh, you'll be able to list them again."
uh-huh.
And then like they never gave me the letter to like approve. And I was like, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "You know what?" I talked to like Caleb, and he's like, "Dude, you're better off. Like it's just a timeout. Like they're just gonna get you again.
Yeah.
So like you're better off not." IP complaints, yeah, it started. Yeah, books were like the safest thing to sell because there were no IP complaints.
Right.
I think most of them come from I'm trying to think like almost companies that make other products that also have books.
Right.
So like maybe this is not a good example, but like Fisher Price, like they make all these toys. Fisher Price, like we don't want sellers selling our stuff. Well,
Right.
they probably have books with like pianos on them or whatever. So
Right.
then you're gonna get flagged for that. I
Okay.
mean, for at volume, like the IP complaints, I don't know, maybe we'd get like one a month, maybe. A
Okay.
lot of the times, like we just deleted the listing
Uh-huh.
and then it went away. I'm starting like Amazon tends not to mess with you as much once you start like I
Give
think
them
once they
volume.
think you're like a good like egg or whatever and like
Right.
not making trouble, like dumb stuff just sometimes happens on the platform.
Right.
It's not as bad. So yeah, I mean for that, I mean you're never gonna win one, I don't think, again. Because if used, like you don't have a receipt, so it doesn't
Right.
really matter. Like you're
Right.
gonna tell the company, "Oh, I got this at Goodwill. It's used," and be like, "Oh, we don't."
So what do you think the best practice would be now then? Like I gave her the advice that basically she gave me the screenshots of the actual it wasn't a letter, it was like an email written, and basically like they had the contact information of the person who gave the IP complaint. And I said, I would, if it were me, like I haven't ever gotten an IP complaint for a book. I've gotten counterfeit claims from ONZ. I had a similar situation back in 2021 where I got suspended, and that was a mess as well.
Yeah.
But my kind of advice to her was, hey, just reach out to this person, be really genuine and nice. Say, this is my bulk, I have a bulk business. Like I have no intention to harm your brand. I'm not going to sell this anymore. I'm curious, is that some advice you'd give now? Or do you say at bulk, it doesn't even matter? Like just worry about volume. It's like they're going to fall off eventually, and volume is going to help you because Amazon, like you said, kind of likes you more when you just do more volume.
Yeah, I think it's both. Like I've never had any luck getting them removed.
Okay.
Like, hey, totally understand your thing. We got this at a thrift store. We bought it used. Like when we bought this, we had no intention, it's not like, you don't want to say it's not fake because you don't know. But like you just say, you're like, yeah, like when we got it used.
Right.
There's like some weird law when like if you buy something used, it's like maybe first sale doctrine or something.
Something like that, yeah.
But basically, if you buy it new, it's like you could decide what to do with it, like whether you resell it
Right.
or whatever the hell you do with it. So like I guess that applies to used, but like I'm just like, yeah, like we're a small business, like we're just trying to like make things work here. Like we'd appreciate it, like if you could remove it. Like we deleted the listing, like we're not gonna sell your brand again. Like
Right.
with books, it's not like it's gonna be real hard to catch, but like you
Right.
just do that anyway.
Right.
Usually you never hear back and they don't do anything. But yeah, I mean Amazon does like to see that, like I guess you're on top of it or like wrote back to
Right.
them or did
So I
whatever.
think probably the biggest thing is she just responds, right? And
Yeah.
yeah.
And sometimes it's Amazon, so like you just respond to Amazon, you're like, oh, this was used, it's not new. They're like, and they'll just send you some like, automated email, like basically says sorry, like we don't care, like you're finished.
That's rough. Let's talk about the counterfeit textbooks because, dude, that was insane for me. So back in 2021,
I think it was about the same time for me too.
Yeah, January 2021, I was selling books. I got test buyed out, literally 3 counterfeit claims within like a 10-day period. Obviously, I tried to reach out to the law firm, said, I was actually a little ballsy. I was like, show me proof that they're counterfeit. And like, we don't need to show you proof, dude, they're counterfeit. And so they don't even have to say, right, ONZ doesn't have to say that they're counterfeit by any means or prove it. You have to prove that you sourced it legitimately, which is difficult, right? Especially if you source, like, unless you bought it from the publisher, which probably not many of us were doing because it's not profitable to do that. But if you can just walk us through the story, how did that process go? Like, how many counterfeit claims did you get? Did your account get suspended? And where did you end up with that happened to like pay the $2,000?
So it was a total mess. Like I always will remember it because I literally went on vacation. My family like rents this like really nice house, and we go there, and it's literally like the first day, and I get this message, and it's like, oh, like you have a counterfeit claim, like it's from a law firm, and they're like, you sold a counterfeit textbook, and like it's like this trademark infringement, and like it's like legit, like you copyright, like you have no leg to stand on or whatever the hell they were claiming. And like luckily my girlfriend is like, a lawyer, so she was like, okay, like whatever, let's get on the phone. So like we actually talked to them like a bunch of times.
Oh, wow.
And we went back and they're like, yeah, we're not trying to do anything. And they were just like, yeah, like we'd like to settle. They're like, I think it's like for each title, it's like $10,000. But like, so I had 2 of them.
Okay.
And so she was just like, well, like prove that they're fake. Like what's fake about them? Like, I don't, maybe it hit differently because she was like a lawyer or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like saying the terms or whatever. And they were just like, well, like our scientists, like blah, blah, blah. And then she was like, all right, like send it back to us then. So like we could like inspect them. Like, no, like we can't do that. And basically they were just like, oh, the only way like you could expect it would be like to come to McGraw Hill or whatever, where the books are being stored, and like you'd have to like go into the lab and we'd have to procure it. Basically, like they made it like literally impossible. I was kind of like curious, like maybe I'll just like go and like And then they're just like, well, and like, secondly, if you plan on selling these again, you should be buying each year's textbook, all of them, to compare against their version.
Yeah, I know. That's crazy,
Like,
right?
what? So it was like, okay. And they were like, basically, like, we're gonna sue you, we're gonna take you to court, all this stuff. And so like it was kind of nerve-wracking. And like I was talking to Caleb, and he's like, I don't really know of anyone they really like taking to court. So you only have 2 titles. And then it was just like, you could just let it fly and see. They're like, probably not gonna go after you. And then were just like, they sent me like a settlement letter, and they're like, we'll settle for, I think it was like $2,000.
Okay.
And they're like, we'll give you a letter to give to Amazon that will like if you promise to implement all these checks and blah blah blah.
Right.
I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do all that. And so I do it, like I send them the check and they cash it, and then they never send the letter.
Jeez, see,
I'm
that's so.
like,
Oh my
damn, like
gosh.
the only reason I paid the 2,000, I was like, I could easily make this back.
Right.
Like if I was able to do it. And I feel like it was totally bogus because it was hard to trace back, but from what I could tell, it was from a Facebook marketplace pickup that I did. Like I bought this girl's books, and I bought like 8 of them, and only 2 of them were like flagged. And I don't know, it didn't seem like this. It was like a student, like,
Right.
and they looked like, so like, I don't know, but like, again, you can't really prove it.
Yeah.
And then if you did go out there, like, oh, I disagree, like the Bible, like, what are you gonna say? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like they just kind of have you. It's definitely a scary situation.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. Like it sucks because it's like, well, like the big corporation is just gonna like throw its weight around. But at the end of the day, like you just have to keep like your account safe.
Right.
And sometimes it's just like not worth it for stuff like that. And I've definitely been in situations where like you just have to be smart. Like I almost drove to a state to pick up like I do like, oh, we'll buy your textbooks or whatever. And this person was like, oh yeah, we got all brand new copies of this and that. Like, and I was like ready to like fork over like $5,000 cash.
Jeez.
Cause I was like, damn, like they really have for this or that. And I was like, I don't know, it seems like fishy. I was like, why are you selling them?
Yeah.
He's like, oh, like, I like got like, I have too much or like some like weird stuff.
Right.
I think it was Caleb. He's like, dude, like they're 100% fake. Like,
yeah.
He's just trying to like move. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, 100%. I'm like, damn, like thanks,
Oh my
bro. You just
God,
saved me
dude.
like $5,000.
That's terrible. Jeez. I'm curious. Can you walk us through the process? So obviously, you eventually got a warehouse when you did your bulk book operation. Can you walk me through? I'm just fascinated in the commercial warehouse space. How do you even go about asking someone about like renting a space? Is there actually like negotiation that goes with how much you pay for rent? Like, what are some of the like common terms in terms of like 6 months, a year? Like, what would you say about that?
Yeah, so renting a warehouse was a whole nother experiment. So I started with Craigslist. So this was when warehouse space was like really tight. Now it's not as tight.
Mhm.
This was like right before COVID. Yeah, it was right around COVID. So like everyone had like, if you're doing Amazon, like you had a small warehouse, like so everything was like pretty much occupied. Then as like COVID happened, like, but I got it before, but like now it'd be easier. But basically I went on Craigslist trying to find space. Space is really expensive. I wanted, which was like ridiculous, a spot, not ridiculous, but with a dock door. So a dock door kind of allows you to buy truckloads. You don't need a forklift, but you're going to pay a lot more money for a spot that has a dock. So basically, a truck could just back in, like you go into a pallet jack, like pull all the stuff out, and like you're good. And that's how they basically prefer to do business with people. And then if you don't have one, you kind of need a forklift and a lift gate, all that stuff.
Right.
So basically, I looked on Craigslist, didn't really find anything. I was trying to spend like I think $2,000, which was like an absolute joke. Like there's like no, like I was like, I want a dock door, like I want a 1-year lease, out of like 1,500 square feet, and like the realtors were like, "You're never gonna find that, dude."
Yeah.
Like, no. So like I couldn't find it on Craigslist. So I'm like, maybe I'll try a realtor. They take me to all these buildings, and then there's just all these like hidden fees. So like there's your rent. So
Uh-huh.
let's say your rent is like, you know, $2,000. Great. Then they're like, oh, but there's like a cam fee. And that I forgot what that stands for, but basically it's like the person takes care of the property. So
Mhm.
like it's like, okay, like we'll mow the lawn, like
Mow the lawn of the warehouse?
yeah, that's like an additional like whatever per square feet. So like you usually, depending on how big your space is, you have to like all I kept asking, I was like, what is the all-in rent? Like ask like how like what is the all-in rent? Like with everything. So then like you also have to so like that's gonna let's just say it was 2,000, maybe it's like another 500. Like
Okay.
it differs by area too. Then you have to figure in electric, depending on how big your space is, you know, that's gonna be some. Internet, internet's like twice as expensive if you're a business for whatever reason. Insurance, you
Oh
definitely
gosh.
need insurance for your building. Most landlords require more than the Amazon limit usually, or
Okay.
mine did. Um, Garbage, which is a racket. When I first moved in, it was like $80. By the time I left, it was like $160 because
Jesus.
gas prices went up, and I
Oh
don't know.
my gosh.
And then like you also have to figure you need to buy equipment for in there. Um, you know, now you're like the cleaning person, right? Because you got to keep it clean. Just like a lot of dumb stuff, like just toilet paper, paper towels, like just all this stuff that you like need that you don't think about. Like you
Right.
have employees, like maybe you need to like get a microwave or like a refrigerator for them to like put lunch and stuff, like all this stuff that you don't think of. But yeah, I eventually actually found looked for 5-ish months, maybe 6
Uh-huh.
months. And I was like so frustrated. There's this one place. It was like kind of a garage. It was like $1,800. I was gonna have to like pave it because it was like gravel.
Oh
But I
wow.
was like, it's like small, but I was like getting impatient because like I was also working at storage units. It was probably like 10 degrees out. So like
Oh
I
my
was
gosh.
tired of that. And I was like, whatever, this guy is gonna be the last resort. If I don't find something, you know, in the next, 2 weeks, I'm just gonna go back to him. So I was like, listen, like, I'm really interested in the space. Can I pave? And he's like, oh, like someone else like came along and like they're gonna buy it or
Uh,
lease it. I was like, damn, like I was like, I can't believe it. And so then like I was randomly went to Craigslist and saw this warehouse, and it was totally random. Like I was going on every day, I stopped going on, and then one day I was like, let me just like go on, like whatever. And like there is a 5 bay garage, and it had like everything I wanted. And
uh-huh.
it said it was, I think it was 2,400 or it was
Uh-huh.
22. It was
Okay.
2,200. And I literally just shot the person the email. I was like, oh, I'm really interested. Is it still available? They're like, yeah. They're like, when can you see it? I'm like, when can you like be there? And he's like, I could, meet, I don't know, today at 8. I was like, all right, cool. Like went there. I'm like, damn, like this is it. Like this is it. Like I don't know, I have a YouTube video of like a tour of it. But
Uh-huh.
basically it had the 5 doors. It was totally open. That was like one of the biggest problems of warehouses. A lot of them are like broken up.
I see.
Um, and they'll tell you like, oh yeah, like we're happy. Like we'll make whatever changes you want. Like we can knock down this or build you a dock door. But then they're like, yeah, like that's gonna cost like 20,000. But like
Jeez.
you get like a 3-month lease. Like we'll spread that 20,000 over the three. Like it's just like
That's
total
crazy.
ridiculousness.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess not if you're gonna have to like knock stuff down, but like it's never free. And then yeah, I saw it and I was like, all right, cool. Like it had like an office. The upstairs had all this shelving,
Oh
like
wow.
already built in. And I was like, oh, would I be able to buy this shelving? He's like, it's drilled to the floor, like it comes with the place. I'm like, damn, like this is awesome. And yeah, I signed a 1-year lease. Most of the stuff you go through with like rent like a realtor,
Uh-huh.
you're looking at least 2 to 3 years,
Uh-huh.
probably. I will say do not. It's a wrong catch. I'm glad I didn't now, but who knows? Like I almost got a much bigger space than I needed. Like
Okay.
it would have been like twice the space I had. Like the space I had was 4,500 square feet, which
Uh-huh.
was a ton,
That
but
is a lot. Jeez.
the rent was only 2,200. Like some of the
Right.
other places I were looking at, like that, it was like 4,000 for that much
Right.
space. So like it was just like kind of like this guy's like classic car garage. Like that's
Yeah.
what I was using it and like didn't really care that much. Like it was just kind of extra money for him. So yeah, you don't ever want to get in a spot because like I would have been so screwed if I got that other place because restock limits happen like literally like 2 weeks later after I
Jeez.
got the keys. And then like I would have had to build all merchant fulfilled shelves. Like I
Yeah.
would have been in that lease because like they were like, oh yeah, we'll knock down like they had a dock door like, oh, we would knock down like this ramp that was leading up to it.
Uh-huh.
And like I had to stay like 2 years if I agreed to that. Um and yeah, that would have been like a nightmare. Who knows? Maybe it would have been better with like if I could get truckloads and had like the dock door, but I don't know. I don't regret it, but yeah, you definitely don't want to get it over your head. You want
Mhm.
to know like how much you'll be all in for rent, what you're responsible for. Like for example, like for me, the landlord was responsible for like any issues with like water, the bathroom, or whatever. But like if like I broke something, like by dumb luck, it just happened. I didn't break it but like the garage door got like all screwed up somehow. So that was like $800, and I was just like,
Sheesh.
oh, like, and it makes sense. Like if you move into something right and it's perfectly fine, and then you doesn't work, like obviously you broke it.
Right.
Um, so like there's that, and yeah, it's just not something you want to jump into where you know what you're doing. My plan was like to go smaller. I know a lot of people say, oh, get something bigger, you're gonna need more space. For me, it's like I was just doing it as a storage unit, so like anything would be better at that point. And I was like I had the inkling to maybe do like OA or something else. So I was like, you know what, like don't like really go crazy.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I'm glad I kind of like did that. But yeah, and then figure an extra, well, depending how big it is, like almost like 500 to 1,000 and just like electric.
Right.
You have to pay water, like all that stuff because that
So it
adds.
seems like the rent amount is not super crazy. I mean, I guess it could be pretty high, but
Yeah.
then all the little stuff, miscellaneous stuff added up could be a lot. I'm curious, now that I know it didn't sound like you went the consignment route. I know that just from listening to Caleb talk on Avery's book selling camp the other day, that was a big part of his model before he ended up selling it was actually consigning for some people who would actually send him quite a bit of books. So if you were to go back and do it again, or going forward for people who are trying to get into the book game, do you think that is the best way to go is with the consignment?
I do think consignment's a good way to go.
Mhm.
It's definitely, I actually think the way you do it, like online arbitrage, I think
Uh-huh.
is I did it like for a little bit,
Uh-huh.
and it was like just really interesting, like because I remember using eFlip and kind
Mhm.
of doing that whole thing, and I kind of wish like I did more of that
Right.
because I think one of the things I definitely would not go the bulk route.
Uh-huh.
Kind of what Caleb says, like the best ideal situation is get profitable books. Like all of them are
Right.
profitable, so there's no waste.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that's a really good model. Where I think like online arbitrage is, doing it from eBay or even buying off of Amazon and reselling it later. I think is a good route. Bulk is definitely, I don't know. It works for the right person. I mean,
Right.
there's obviously people who are really successful, but like you really have to want to have a warehouse, want to have employees, want to merchant fulfill, you know, want to really, you're probably going to have to build like custom software. Now it seems like some software is like starting to come out,
Mhm.
but like there isn't like, I don't know, easy software out there that's just like really simple because a lot you also have to realize every book you scan is different That
Right.
sounds obvious, but like for OA, it's like you could buy 10 of something, you could buy 20, you could buy 30, and
Right.
like that all goes in the same package or that all goes fits in this kind of box or whatever. But for books, like when you have like, oh, this is $1 profit, oh, this is $2 profit, oh, like maybe we should merge and fulfill this one. Like setting all that up.
There's a lot.
Right? Like, you can't do that in Scout IQ. Like, Scout IQ is, like, a great software, but it's not meant for that. They
Right.
had Pallet IQ. I think that's what it was called. That was kind of the bulk version, which was better, but there's no I know, like, some oh god, I forgot what it's called, but the Cash Monkey, I think it is, but they
Uh-huh.
only work with, like, big sellers, and they take, like, a percentage of your sales, but that's supposedly, like, the most all-in-one solution, but that's like I think like 40 grand to set up because they give you like conveyor belts and it's like this whole thing.
Sweet.
Um, so you
Yeah.
really want to like have to really want to do that,
Yeah.
and like it is just not easy. And I think bulk books could also be like a logistical nightmare.
It
Just
sounds like it.
I mean, when COVID happened, the one our dud pickup person they stopped operations.
Oh, wow.
So, like, now I was getting supply. I couldn't get rid of the old stuff. I think I had, like, 50 gaylords of books that
50
were
gig.
no good
Oh
just
my.
in the warehouse, and I told my supplier, I was like, "Dude, I can't take any more books." And, yeah, it, like, pays to be honest, and he was just like, like, "You're my only source right now, like, what's the deal?" And I was like, "The people who are picking them up, like, can't come." And
Yeah.
I was buying from a recycler, and he's like, "You just have gaylords?" Like, "Yeah, there's, like, 50." He's like, "Oh, dude, like, no problem, like, I can pick them up and, like, I'll recycle them."
Oh, wow.
And I was
Oh,
like, "Really?" He's
that's
like,
nice.
"Yeah,
Jeez.
like, I like doing business with you." So, literally for I think it was 4 days, we met at, like I think it was, like, 4:30 in the morning, and we just, like, loaded up, 10 or 12 every day. And,
Jeez.
yeah, he cleared out the whole warehouse.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, John, if this has taught me anything, it's taught me that I'm right where I should be. I should be
Yeah,
doing
I think you
online book
are.
arbitrage because, dude, this has been a whirlwind, and this is super valuable to me because there's a lot I don't know about the bulk book game. Right, I've learned a lot listening to you. I hope people watching this learned a lot from you as well. But it seems so much more difficult than what I do. Again, we just need Keepa and we need a prep
Yeah.
center. But in any case, we are basically at the hour mark. We could keep going on. I actually have a lot of other questions. So I'd love to bring you back on another time if you
Yeah,
wanted to come back on, if you had a good time here. But
yeah,
I just
definitely.
want to say before we kind of end with the interview, where could people find you if they're interested in on like traditional online arbitrage, which is what you transition to? Where can people find you? Where can people follow you and all that?
So Instagram at Side Hustle Experiment, also at Side Hustle Experiment on YouTube, and at Side Hustle EXP on Twitter.
Very cool. And do you have a course at all for traditional way?
I don't.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
I
Not yet.
think things to give everything away for free on YouTube.
Okay.
I'm
We'll
thinking
make
about
a
making
YouTube
a free
channel.
course. We'll see.
Yeah. Sounds good, John. I would say thank you so much for being here. This is very insightful. Very insightful. I also had a very good laugh at some of your hardships, which I'm sorry, but they were very
Uh,
funny. And as long as you were laughing, I feel like it was okay.
yeah,
I was
no, it's
laughing.
all good.
Okay.
Looking back, it is really funny.
All right. All right, everyone. So I'll see you in the next one and have a good one. So see ya.
Peace.